welcome. This is Hotline 21. I'm your host, Bruce Jackson. Today at the Gift House, we've got another great show for you today. And we're going to talk about very sensitive matter that is happening in communities of color. But first, let me introduce you to my guest, Mr. Clyde Banks. And Clyde, I want to thank you for coming out. It's a pleasure having you here. And he's going to give us a lot of spirited information about what's happening in communities of color and how we should address food deserts. And so, without further delay, I'm going to show you something very disturbing that is happening right here in this country that is impacting very negatively the health of people of color. Diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, a whole plethora of diseases that is destroying our community. And it's all related to food, the lack of. So, here we are. We're going to watch this very disturbing, okay? And we're going to discuss it relatively shortly. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Gwen Pepin, and I'm reporting here today from the West Side Writing Project. Many Americans are struggling to obtain affordable nutritional food in their neighborhoods. These people most likely reside in a food desert. Food desert is the label given to an area where fresh, healthy food is widely unavailable and there is an absence of large mainstream grocery stores. Residents live without the accessibility of food important for proper nutrition and without the benefits of a local supermarket. According to MSNBC.com, in the United States, approximately 23.5 million people currently live in a food desert, including 6.5 million children. African Americans and Latinos are the biggest occupants of food deserts.
Living in these areas puts a strain on mental, physical, and financial health. For those with a vehicle, living in areas like these may be more inconvenient than problematic. Some travel miles in their cars to get to a supermarket, which is difficult considering the rising gas prices. Practically all food deserts are located in low-income communities, yet many have to either drive the distance or purchase overpriced foods from a nearby convenience store, which have had very limited selections. However, for many, this option does not stand. Without vehicles or a large local grocery store, people look to mini marts or cheap, unhealthy food options in the area for meals. Parents worry about providing quality meals for their family, and food deserts lead to severe health complications. These areas have high rates of diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and other illnesses. Locals become accustomed to eating cheap food with no nutritional value and develop terrible eating habits and bad health.
As residents shop for groceries outside their communities, money leaves areas that are already needy or poverty-stricken. In East Garfield Park, community groups dealt with this very issue.
We're finding is that there's a lot of money leaving the community because we don't have the retailers here.
Right.
So because of all that out shopping and leakage, we're losing millions of dollars each year. Just think, we can bring that money here. It'll make our tax base stronger, make our local schools stronger, but also give us more retail alternatives to go and shop.
Here in Chicago, many of our neighborhoods are considered food deserts. In fact, according to News1.com, Chicago is the second worst urban food desert in the nation. NBC reports that around 600,000 Chicagoans live in this area. African Americans or Latinos on the Chicago South and West Side are the ones who are greatly impacted by food inequality. Two communities in particular are Humboldt Park and Garfield Park. East Humboldt Park has one of the highest rates of type 2 diabetes in the nation. According to WHPDevelopmentCouncil.net in West Humboldt Park, 14% of adults have been diagnosed with diabetes, 35% of adults are obese, 47% of children are obese, and 35% of adults have been diagnosed with high blood pressure.
Because these areas are poor, many residents receive food stamps, which makes the existence of food deserts quite ironic. However, steps are being taken to improve the way of living. There is the Healthy Stores campaign, where convenience stores are being urged to designate an area for fresh, healthy food. Camille Milton, the Healthy Stores campaign project manager, is looking to provide the underserved West Humboldt Park with dairy products and fresh produce in corner stores. In return, participating store owners receive management and marketing assistance. Many residents call for the outright closing of unhealthy stores and fast food restaurants. Not only are there health risks, many are unclean and allow loitering and illegal activity. In Garfield Park, locals cried out for the closing of a corner store, Willie's.
I have been in this community for 53 years.
Okay.
And for 53 years, I've seen changes. For 53 years, I've seen good things and bad things. Standing behind me right now is one of the bad things in this community. We have been fighting for many years to get this done. Now, also, the fact that children could not walk past without being harassed. Women could not stand here after leaving church and community meetings without being harassed by the men. Prostitution, open air drug dealing, backdoor illegal cigarette selling, backdoor liquor sales, loose cigarettes, all kinds of things were happening here. It took a concerted effort of the prayers of the people and a combined effort of the community residents to get this done.
This summer in Humboldt Park, the Puerto Rican Culture Center opened a fresh food cooperative selling fresh vegetables, fruit, and Caribbean cuisine. Students from Dr. Pedro Albizu Campos High School grow fresh food in a new greenhouse built on the roof of the building. CVS and Walgreens are now stocking up on fresh produce and frozen meats in areas in Chicago.
In Humboldt Park, there is Monarch Community Garden and Patchwork Farm. Both of these are initiatives to bring in healthy food to areas that need it. Monarch Garden is tended to by residents and is the result of a partnership between Norwegian American Hospital, Northwestern University's Department of Family and Community Medicine, and Geoponica. Patchwork Farm, located on 2805 West Chicago Avenue, is the partnership of two friends, Katie Williams and Miley Medhurst. The West Humboldt Park Farmers Market and Bazaar not only offer vegetables but recreation and products like clothing and jewelry. Also in Humboldt Park, the Diabetes Empowerment Center on Paseo Boricua works to inform residents about diabetes, prevent the disease, and promote healthy eating and living.
As the food desert issue continues to gain more attention, more people not only here in Chicago but nationwide begin to understand the relationship between access to healthy food choices and the overall health of a community. We also have to acknowledge that in most underserved areas, making healthy food choices requires a change in lifestyle and eating habits, which doesn't happen overnight. As we continue to make improvements, less people will suffer from health-related illnesses in these underserved areas. This is Richard Marion.
This is Gwen Pepin, and we're reporting from the West Side Writing Project.
Wow. That's rather disturbing.
Certainly is, Bruce. I'm glad you had me on. It was great to see that not only did they discuss the whole nation as having these food deserts in different pockets, particularly where minorities reside, but also narrowed it down to Chicago and then further down to Humboldt Park. Is one of the neighborhoods, and specifics as to what's going on there, as to why people don't have good access, easy access to healthy food.
Absolutely. And you know, even in Humboldt Park, that's predominantly community of color. And the question is, and it's, you know, sometimes we don't like talking about certain issues in this country, but this is an issue that speaks to race. And because you don't see this if you go to other particular areas, as they showed the map, if you leave the south side and west side of Chicago and you start going to the north side, where you don't have, or you have a much more amalgamated culture there, you don't have food deserts. In fact, you have a plethora of food. And it not only speaks to the race issue, it also speaks to civil rights. I have a report here from the Illinois Advisory Committee to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And it says that here in the country, we're supposed to have adequate food. And here we're looking right here in this country, in the west side and south side of Chicago, and it's really all, pretty much all throughout the country, in my communities of color, we have food deserts. And we got to ask the question, how do we resolve this?
Absolutely. I think the film, and again, kudos to the makers of that short, and highlighting a real acute problem that we have in our communities. But the fix is got to be multiple prongs to the fix, and the farmers market is one of the ways that we are addressing that in several communities, and also the food buses that bring in fresh fruits and vegetables, particularly to our seniors, is another way. Healthy Food Hub is one that I've been working with for a number of years, with bringing in local food from outside of the city, you know, from the suburbs, in this case out in the south suburbs, and going to specific areas that really need it. For instance, 75th and South Shore as one of the places that it has traditionally been had. We also had Malcolm X for a number of years, Malcolm X College on the west side. We've also got right now out in Oak Forest, right at the Oak Forest Hospital. So getting a real close look and connection to health and your eating habits. I think that's something that we need to follow up on and make sure that we emphasize. But using these convenience stores and gas stations as the primary source of our nutrition is completely something that is not going to work for us.
Right.
You walk into a gas station and pay for your gas in the morning, and you got school-age kids stocking up with bags full of these Flamin' Hots and all this candy and what have you. It just is not conducive to them being able to learn based on just the nutrition that they're ingesting. So we need to change that mindset. You talk about the economics, specifically. We just have to vote with our dollars, so to speak, and that we have to refuse to continue to push our money out to these places that have substandard food. You go by the meat counter as an example, for those of us that eat meat, and you look at the stuff that's brown, you can tell, oh my goodness, it's been sitting here for way too long, and it's not healthy, but people are buying this stuff. We have to be able to vote with our dollars.
They're hungry. That's why they're buying it. That's why they're hungry.
So we need to establish some food co-ops, as an example, to ensure that we're bringing in the freshest, the most nutritious fruits, vegetable, produce that we can. And the UNIA, the organization that I am a president of here in Chicago, we have done something with that, with respect to coming up with a food wholesale group. This is the first step is in New York, in Queens, but the Restaurant Owners Corporation is what it's called, and specifically the idea is that we can buy in bulk for the community. Now, primarily it's for the restaurant owners who buy $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of food and other dry goods per week. But we've opened the doors to the community to ensure that they have an option outside outside of, again, these fast food places and gas stations, which, again, are not conducive to what we need to have for the nourishment of our bodies.
And I'm going to jump in and just add this to what you were saying, because I think that's great what you're doing, and that's why I really want to have you on the show, because I know you have the expertise and ideals to address this issue. And there's the other thing was that there are some businesses out there that are catering to communities and providing them with food, like Jules and Osco and different big box companies like that. Since we're dealing with a food desert, is this something that we can do where we can get, because not only do we have a food desert on the west side and the south side of Chicago, we've got a lot of vacant land out there and a lot of vacant buildings out there. So is there something that we can do in terms of working with the aldermen, working with government, county government, city government, getting a building there and what you're talking about, and having that food put there so people can have a place to get some decent, fresh food?
Absolutely, Bruce. And when you talk about funding for those types of ventures, just as an example, look at the lotto, the lottery here in Chicago, in 3 minority zip codes. $35 million was spent in 1 year. Now, with that, you could have put together a couple of different jewels that you would own with that money. So we have to, again, vote with our dollars. Collectively, we have a substantial amount of money that would be available to do something like that. But we just have to be focused on how we spend our money.
Let me
go ahead.
Let me just jump in and add this too. I like you said about what I didn't know it was $35 million in 1 year. Just
And
for the
3
lottery.
black zip codes on the south side.
Wow.
35 million on Lotto. And let's take, for instance, South Shore. There was I believe it was the Dominic's on 71st and Jeffrey in the South Shore. Now, the nearest grocery stores are probably all the way up on Stony Island, which probably, as they mentioned in the film clip, that if you have a car, you're probably okay. But not everyone has a car.
Right.
It's become increasingly more expensive to own a vehicle. And to take the difference between going 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, and 8 to 10 blocks, it's a major difference in terms of going to your regular food shopping that you would do on a weekly basis for your family. So that grocery store left probably 8 or 9 years ago, and it still has not been replaced. Now, you talked about working with the local politicians, or the aldermen, what have you. So that should be part of it. But again, the community has got to stand up and vote with its dollars to ensure that we've got adequate, healthy food that we can.
Now let me just jump in and just say this. They're talking about bringing in marijuana as a form to sort of help support the state. That's supposed to bring in just an enormous amount of funding. What do you think about asking them to have at least a portion of that money set aside to address food deserts?
I think that should be a community benefit that we should ask for. Similar to the way that we asked for Lotto to add to the budget for our schools, as an example. So again, if this is going to be a major revenue generation component of our state and or local budgets, then we should be able to ask, as the people, we should be able to ask where those monies are expended.
Now, I remember Lotto. Lotto was supposed to have been for the schools, but now the schools are complaining, and they're saying that they don't have money for the pensions for the teachers and what have you. what about having some type of advisory board where, because who's supposed to have gotten the money, we don't really know. But if we had a community advisory board that could kind of be guard dog of the funds and to assure that things like the schools get funded, things like food deserts get funded, so we don't have to keep looking at a cancer that continues to expand and we put up money. What do you think about an advisory board that
I
can
think
handle
that
something like
is certainly something we need to have a voice at the table. When you think about the TIF money that we currently have in Chicago being used as a private slush fund for our politicians, the ones that are, again, in their inner circle, and they can dole it out to major universities or major corporations who really don't need it. You think about DePaul University having an endowment of $40 billion. Why do they need money, tax money in the form of TIF taken from an Inglewood area and sent up to the DePaul neighborhood on the north side? It doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't be happening. So again, we need to have people at the table that are doing that.
Considering DePaul got their own TIF. You have their own funds. So I'm going to cut you
On the
off.
same thing with Whole Foods, and okay, well, maybe they use the food desert as a way to get a Whole Foods into Inglewood at 63rd and Halstead. So it is something that should be a viable option for our communities to be able to use, and not necessarily to just turn the funds over to an institution that already has pretty much all they need.
Absolutely. What we need is a balance. What we need is a balance. They're telling me I only have 1 minute left, and so let's talk about how we can create a balance. How would you go about creating a balance in the city, particularly how it relates to food deserts on the west and south side of Chicago?
Personally, I think we just need to ensure that we galvanize our own communities to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. From there, look at what it is we can do to make it happen. Make sure that we've got the experts at the table that can work on those various supermarkets that we would build, and ensure that the community can benefit not only from the availability, the ease of getting to the stores, but also perhaps in the revenue sharing.
Okay, great. I love that, and I'm gonna tell you right now, and I want to get a pledge from you, if I can get one today. Let's resolve this matter, at least in Chicago, on the west side and south side of Chicago. Can I get the pledge?
Yes, sir.
With me on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Bruce, for having me.
Thank you so much. And anyone else want to join us? We'll be back next month, and we're gonna talk about resolving this issue. Thank you, and good night.
Night.